Welcome back to She Can, where women lead by example. We lead with women's stories and experiences and insights to support others because it's easier to be what you can see. I am very excited to talk to Jude Kelly CBE today. Jude Kelly, welcome to She Can. You're a British theatre director and producer. You're the founder of the WOW Foundation. That's an annual Women of the World festival. And you founded that to celebrate the achievements of women and girls and confront global gender injustice. It's a 3-day festival now taking place in about 45 locations across 6 continents. And you reach 65 million people. That's an incredible achievement. You were the artistic director of the Southbank Center from 2006 to 2018. You directed hundreds of theater opera productions. You received an enormous amount of awards, 2 Olivier Awards and many, many, many others. You consult the Olympic ceremonies. You founded a range of arts institutions and commissioned and supported the work of thousands of female artists across all genres. You really are a global champion for equality, and you're one of UK's most powerful cultural leaders. Tell us a bit more about yourself and your journey.
Well, I come from a very modest background. And so that's an interesting realization that if the society allows for social mobility, then if you have this sort of spirit and opportunities, then you can move through society and take up positions that are exciting and influential and allow you to realize your dreams. And I've had those opportunities. And so I want to start with this idea that, you know, you are the product of the society that you are in.
Yeah. Because
I don't believe that, you know, everybody can just make it if they feel like it. It's much more complex than that. But I grew up in Liverpool, which is a seaport. My father was one of 14 children, was, you know, the first set of children to go to university. I'm one of 4 daughters. So I already had, if you like, parents who believed in education, a father who believed in girls' emancipation, which is a huge piece of good fortune. Yeah. And I always wanted to be in the arts from when I was very little. And I didn't have anybody telling me that the arts wasn't suitable for girls. That came later, actually, funny enough. When I was at university, I was told that women didn't direct. And, you know, so more of the obstacles came once I'd left home, because certainly at home, I was given an idea that the freedom of my imagination was my great power. And that's what I should sort of journey forward with, plus, you know, proper education. So, and it was at a time in the UK when social progress was something that the society believed in. Yeah. And so again, it's really important because, you know, this conversation that I have about my life, when I have it with women from Pakistan, with women from the Yemen, with women from, you know, parts of sub-Saharan Africa, with different societies that have made it much harder, perhaps, for girls and women to break through, or for whom social progress isn't a priority, or the caste system is very tough, it isn't always good for people to feel, well, just by energy, you can get where you need to get to, because that's not true. Yeah. But when I left school, I wanted to study drama at university because I wanted to be a theatre director. And that automatically tells you that I had an idea that as a person, I should be able to craft a narrative and shape a narrative, because that's what directors help to do. Yeah. And I gradually realized that the narrative around women had been like pre-prescribed as having, you know, diminished possibilities compared to men. And I was genuinely shocked and just sort of genuinely horrified, actually. And I suppose ever since then, I've been thinking, well, it's not okay. It's not okay that women's rights are pre-prescribed as being smaller and of less power and less importance than men's. And so I suppose I spent my whole life trying to do two things: realize my own artistic dreams, because the human right to be yourself is critical, and at the same time try to protect and enhance other people's dreams, knowing that there's lots of reasons why, obstacles are put in people's way, especially particularly girls and women's.
Yeah, Jude, yes, and you've shown that for so many decades, and you've made such an enormous change. I'm wondering, the times have also changed. How relevant do you think it is still today? What times do we live in now? And why is the WOW Foundation just as important? And why is it just as important to amplify women artists, women's stories, and to lead with that?
Yes, well, I started the WOW Women in the World festivals 15 years ago when I was artistic director at the Southbank Centre. And I should say that although they're festivals all over the world, they're not just arts festivals. They cover all kinds of subjects, from health, from law, from all psychology. I mean, they're everything that women do. They cover the issues that women have about poor research, not enough opportunities, but also the amazing things that women have done, is everything. I mean, women have done everything, including space travel and mountaineering and so on. It's just that we haven't had a critical mass to say this is just naturally what all women do. But I started it actually because in the UK at the time, women, particularly young women, were saying, well, we don't need feminism. We sort of got there. This was before Malala was shot, before the Delhi rape, before the Me Too movement, before anything that made people realize that actually they still needed to be angry and still needed to analyze the society for injustice. But, young women particularly would say casual things like, well, it's not like we're in Pakistan. And you say, well, do you know anything about Pakistan? They say no, but they had this idea that there was a sort of binary situation where some women in the West had all the rights they need and other women were still fighting to get them. Yeah. So I wanted to say, well, actually, this isn't true. Women in all societies are still suffering from a huge amount of violence. Women in all societies are still expected to take the majority of care in their family. Women in all societies are still auditioned all the time as to appropriate ability and leadership, on and on and on. And of course, we haven't got equal pay and so on. So I wanted to say, look, let's get people involved again in the fight for equal rights, not enough, not it's quite good or nearly, but equal. Let's get involved again in that. Let's be more candid about showing up to talk about things that people were still, shying away from. And I think that in doing that, I was able to demonstrate that not only has history made it very hard, for women's voices to have been heard or remembered, but that we're still doing the same now. And we're still minimizing women's contributions. We're still rubbishing things that women do and say, and then claiming them as things that men have said and done instead. And that all of this makes women and men feel that they need to be, protected by male authority rather than having, equality for both sides. So I also, I've done obviously so much fiction, directing plays, directing operas, etc. But I really wanted to spend some time doing facts, like putting together stories, not so much like the data, but the actual stories of what girls and women were both enduring, but also what they'd achieved. Celebration's a huge part of what WOW does, because I do think that if you can celebrate achievement, it gives you the stamina and the optimism to make change. So, I slightly turned away for a while from directing theatre because I didn't want to do any more plays that reinforced the society where women were assistants or, second to men's stories. I wanted to put women's stories in the centre. And that's been very, very gratifying and marvellous, because it increases my perplexity that the world doesn't want that to simply be the case. I truly don't fully understand why patriarchy still believes it is the preferred system in terms of an efficient world.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, you've done this for such a long time. You have been a real leader in making those women's stories heard. What really matters to you now? And what do you feel do you want to matter in the world? What legacy do you want to leave that is beyond to what you've already done?
Well, I think that I'm old enough to see that, progress happens in fits and starts. It's not a linear process.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm old enough to look at this current wave of backlash and not be surprised. Because we've seen this in history before, not just with women's rights, but with race rights, with LGBTQ plus rights. We've seen that things can take a kind of almost miraculous turn for the better. And then it frightens people who have a preference for the society that they know and the prejudices that they hold, and that they push back very hard. And that's happening now for women. And I'd like my legacy to be one of remaining positive, that you can't cave in dismay and go, well, what's the point? You have to say history has a very, very, very long arc. But if I look at the progress of girls and women, you have to say that we have made change. It's terribly alarming when you see the prison doors slammed shut, literally, as in Afghanistan at the moment, and who knows what will happen in Iran. But the general progress is still forward. And so I'd like that to be the legacy, that, not giving up is going to be critical to other young women feeling as if they can pick up the baton and move forward. And I suppose another thing that really matters to me is that we become unafraid about being truthful. We found it really difficult to be truthful about domestic and partner violence. We found it really difficult to be truthful about our bodies, about the medical aspects of our bodies, and about the natural aspects of our bodies, the menstruation, menopause. We found it really truthful to be honest about the complexity of childbirth and child rearing and infertility and all of these things. Yeah. And if we, as women, could remain courageous about being truthful in our language and in our sharing of experiences, then I think it'd be much more difficult to put us back in a box with the word shame, wrapped around the outside. And this is particularly true, I think, about sexual harassment and rape, that we need to be able to be truthful and come together to sort of shield women against the consequences of being truthful. So I think I'd like my legacy to be helping people feel as if being truthful is the right thing to do, and that we'd all protect each other.
Yeah. And I think you show that in your authentic leadership, Jude. So I'm wondering, what future do you feel the arts and culture in England have, and what changes do we need to see to make that happen?
Well, always when society is short of money, and we are at the moment, and lots of Western societies are concerned, the debate always comes up about whether arts and culture is a luxury, and can we afford it? And there's no doubt about it that arts and culture are the things that humans do in all societies, regardless of money. Human beings make music, they dance, they sing. They will always make culture. But I think when you have such a sophisticated web of infrastructural, cultural, buildings and ideas, the history and the modernity sort of working side by side all the time, as you do in the UK, that dialogue about who we are, what we think about, what matters to us, it's really important to sustain it. So again, I think that culture in the UK will and has been suffering slightly from the backlash of what they call woke. This word woke is very, very troubling. I mean, it's a word invented to ridicule. Well, in fact, it wasn't invented. It was invented originally by, I think, African Americans talking about just like political understanding, political nous almost, like the real politics of situations. But it's been appropriated and then used as a weapon. And so there's a whole kind of idea at the moment that, you know, the arts, when it speaks about justice and social progress, is somehow woke and therefore like contaminating ordinary people with propaganda. And I think this is really disturbing. So that's disturbing. And then the backlash against that backlash is disturbing. So I don't feel the cultural wars are helpful, but we're in them at the moment. And I think they reflect, you know, a wider war, which is the sort of the war of ideologies around politics. I'm not an ideological person. I want kindness and practical realities to be part of how we operate with each other. And so I think that the arts just needs to make sure it doesn't follow the trajectory of political ideology and end up also being, if you like, cruel, and simplistic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. These are places that are supposed to narrate, show us the stories, build the bridges, lead by example, and show all the different sides and all the different human sides of how to deal with the times that we live in.
Yeah.
Jude, so what tips would you give to young women coming into the arts and culture world now?
Well, I think that people will always say, oh, well, it used to be so much easier in my day and now it's really, really hard. Everybody told me it was hard when I was growing up. There's different kinds of ways of it being hard. I think it depends where you live now, of course, what part of the world you're operating from. I think it is easier for girls and women to be given respect and opportunities in the arts if you're operating in the global north. And we should seize those opportunities. You will still get pushback because you don't have the legitimacy of hundreds of years of art history in any genre that can kind of make you feel as if you belong, you know, to this long line of previous artists. But you do belong to that line, and the women were always making work. So I think that, you know, both, like, don't believe history, do research history to find your own version of history, but, you know, recognize the fact that you can't have it both ways. You can't want to change story and also be easily accepted. People will resist you changing a story because they're comfortable with the ones that they've got. So if you find that you are often, like, if you're like pushed to, as you're trying to make change happen, then that goes with the territory of, you know, of rebellion. So I suppose that's the thing. You just have to live with this reality that you will often feel like an outsider because you are pushing against a norm that doesn't want to change. But you know, you can change things. It's hard, but you can. And so I suppose just never give up. If you really, really want to be in the arts, then never give up. The never give upness is an essential ingredient in the character, I suppose, of somebody who wants to be an artist.
Yeah, and stick to why you are there. What is your why? And you keep going back to that. Jude, so do you feel this is what you do? How do you feel? Do you feel like a rebel? Do you feel like, you know, you had to go back to your why the whole time? What qualities do you feel you picked up that really served you or serve you still?
I felt as if I had to constantly say that what I believed in, which is the human right to everyone to enjoy the arts, had to be constantly revisited, because people often wanted to say, well, you know, only certain kinds of people can enjoy the arts, only certain kinds of people, in a way, are, you know, aesthetic. And there is like a kind of intellectual class system that operates in the arts that excludes some and approves of others. I was always battling against that, not just for myself, but for everybody else too. And so people would, you know, would want to minimize your views or ridicule your views. So you have to have so I think what I have is quite a fierce belief in human justice. And I also have a lot of optimism about things, because I meet enough people to think humans are great. I like humans. So I think that my luck, and this is luck, is I was born with a sort of positive spirit, and it gives you a lot of help, a positive spirit, because when one obstacle comes up in front of you, you just find a way of negotiating it, or you walk the other direction, get through another way. And I think over the years, because I'm now in my I'm 70, I can look back and see that that's a pattern. Moving around obstacles, negotiating difficulties, thinking not just like, how will I get through, but just knowing I would get through somehow. Yeah. So kind of cultivating that in yourself. Fear is a really difficult thing, because fear is usually something that you're frightened of something that doesn't really exist. I mean, sometimes it exists, of course, but in the main, our fear is something that we say that something is going to be evidently true when it isn't true. It's just we have a terror that it might be true. So I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to consider what my fear is and see how I can move beyond it.
Yeah, and look it squarely in the eye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jude, so what are you most proud of? What are the things that you really celebrate?
Well, I do celebrate it when people come to me and say, I heard you talk 25 years ago, or I worked with you 30 years ago, or, and it inspired me to go, and now I do this, this, and this, Or often we hear that from the WOW festivals all over the world. I saw somebody in Turkey speak, and now I'm doing this, or I saw somebody in Nigeria speak, and now I'm doing this. So handing on the baton is what I'm most proud of. Feeling as if, however small the gesture of hope, that it landed somewhere and made a difference to somebody who will then also hand it on. That's what I'm most proud of, just doing my bit. I've done lots of productions that I liked and people enjoyed, and I've obviously set up lots of institutions that have mattered, and I'm glad about that. I think that at root, though, what counts is belief systems where people can go, somebody, and in this case, hopefully me, believed in this strongly enough to make this impact. And now I will also believe in something strongly, and I will make an impact. So handing on, I've said I'm not an ideology person, and I'm not, but I do believe in having beliefs about the great potential of human life, and how that can best work in a spirit of justice. And I think if people have been influenced by that, and seen how you can turn that into kind of practical action through the arts, then I'm very happy.
Yeah, and you've shown that over so many decades. Jude, so what is there left for you to do? What are your plans and goals? Do you have any? How is the WOW Festival continuing?
Well, WOW is really continuing to spread very widely. I mean, we're getting new partners all the time across the world. More and more people are going to be part of the WOW community. In fact, we're just launching in about 6 months' time kind of a big new global hub website that allows more and more people to take part and be partners and start their own WOW festivals. So that's very exciting. I've also just taken up a new position as head of St. Catherine's College in Oxford, which means that I have another platform, as it were, to talk about my work and to build new work with young people. So, yeah, I feel as if there's a lot more still to come. And I'm writing a book at the moment about my life as a woman in the arts, which will come out next year, or 2026, yeah.
which we cannot wait to read. Jude, so what would you like our listeners to take away from your story? What are the top things you would like them to walk away with?
Well, recognize that if you were born without obvious entitlements, I mean, obviously, I'm a white woman, so that's one entitlement. But if you're born without obvious entitlement or not too many, that's not a reason to be daunted or ashamed. It's a reason to feel excited because you're going to have a very fascinating journey. But make sure that if you do build success for yourself, that you keep the door wide open behind you for other people to come through and follow you. Always help the ladder to stay down, never pull the ladder up behind you.
Yeah, amazing. Jude, thank you so much for your time, for telling your story, for giving so much insights. Talk about your experience, the changes you made and the changes you want to see. And we cannot wait to read your book. Have an incredible start at St. Catherine's. And thank you so much.
Pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.